Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are unpacking a wildly popular virtualization tool that is somehow simultaneously loved and fiercely criticized by its own power users. And as you can probably tell, we are fully embracing the deep orange, sharp white, and slate gray aesthetic of the Proxmox logo today to really match our subject. We're looking at a platform that gives folks a super friendly path into virtualization. It's got a massive community, and honestly, it's stable enough that home labs and real, actual businesses build their entire infrastructure on it. But right now, there is a fascinating, bubbling friction within its user base that we need to talk about. You know, there's this saying floating around the community. The complaint started with a compliment, and that is exactly how you know a frustration has truly been earned. The sharpest criticisms of Proxmox aren't coming from random haters or drive-by ranters, not at all. They're coming from dedicated home labbers and sysadmins who actually care enough to stick around. They absolutely love the tool, they rely on it every single day, but they're getting increasingly frustrated by its rough edges. The anger is really just a hidden compliment, right? They expect more because the platform has genuinely earned those higher expectations over the years.
All right, so to diagnose exactly what is causing all of this friction, let's boot up our system status check and look at the agenda. We are going to cover the Proxmox paradox, fighting the underlying Linux base, the documentation tax, API and identity crises, install friction, and finally, venting versus patching. Let's just dive right in.
Section 1, the Proxmox paradox, the appliance versus the OS. Let's start by looking at the core identity crisis that plagues this whole platform. This setup brilliantly illustrates that underlying tension. On one side, you have this appliance-like virtualization. Proxmox desperately wants to be a friendly, purpose-built UI with guarded pathways, which is a massive draw for VMware refugees who are used to, never actually touching the hypervisor directly. But fundamentally, Proxmox is a raw Debian Linux host. It's literally sitting on top of a Linux system, complete with all the standard conventions and the heavy expectation of manual OS edits. So Proxmox essentially acts as a two-faced system. And the real pain begins when these two distinct personalities completely disagree with one another. Moving right along to Section 2, fighting the Linux base, specifically network and DNS clashes. If you're an experienced Linux admin, this path probably gives you a bit of heartburn. Seeing a standard configuration path completely ignored is incredibly frustrating. It's like Proxmox wants to be Linux, but then it actively refuses to behave like the Linux system it sits on. When it just flat out ignores standard WN network config fragments, like the interfaces.d directory, it forces admins into this narrow Proxmox-only way of doing things. And honestly, it validates the pain of seasoned admins. Because it doesn't just feel like a missing feature, it feels like the tool is deliberately stepping right over a well-established convention. And of course, we have to talk about DNS overrides because, let's be real, isn't it always DNS? This happens when the web interface quietly fights the underlying host's manual configurations. Say an admin changes the node DNS settings in the GUI. They totally expect the system to honor it. Instead, the web interface creates this weird second truth that constantly wrestles with the underlying system. To beginners, that's just confusing. But to experienced users, it actually feels like a breach of trust. If the host is Linux, admins expect to use Linux patterns without the graphical interface secretly fighting their manual tweaks behind the scenes. Okay, Section 3, the documentation tax. We're looking at CLI help and paper cuts. Bad help text is a tax on everyone. Now, this complaint might sound a little less dramatic than deep API behavior, but trust me, it is a daily, vital frustration. New users pay this tax because they simply don't know the commands yet. And experienced users, even production cluster admins, pay it because, while they know exactly what should exist, the command line help is so notoriously poor, they're forced to constantly alt-tab back to the web documentation just to find the right flag. Good CLI help is not a luxury, folks. It is a core part of the product. When heavy automation users feel like the CLI tools were written exclusively for people who already memorized the source code, that is a daily paper cut that slowly just erodes their confidence in the entire platform.
Section 4. API and Identity Crises, the VMID problem. Let's see how a tiny design choice spirals into a massive disaster for automation.
Walk through this chronological headache with me. Picture this. You clone a template. The API demands a unique VM ID, which happens to just be a simple integer. But over time, as you retire old machines, those simple integers inevitably get reused. And boom, that is exactly where disaster strikes. Your backups, your job references, your long-lived automation scripts, they all just completely break down. Look, reusing an IP address for a new machine, totally normal. But reusing a VM ID, that is incredibly messy if that ID still actually means something in your backup history or your monitoring naming conventions. Trying to make a simple integer serve as a permanent machine identifier forever is literally asking for pain.
The core takeaway here? A platform absolutely shouldn't force users to invent an ID authority on the side. In community discussions, some users actually admitted they write custom middleware just to hand out free IDs for tools like Terraform. Think about that for a second. When your users feel they need to build an entirely separate system just to paper over basic object identity behavior, your platform is leaking its complexity right into the user's laps.
Which brings us to Section 5, Install Friction and Repositories, Wishlists, and Edge Cases. The crucial point to understand here is that this community wishlist isn't just edge case whining, not at all. Users are asking for encrypted ZFS storage, correctly noting that the current workaround of using Lux plus CFS feels, frankly, just wrong. They want encrypted boot disks and bonded networking right out of the box from the standard ISO install. These aren't wild demands. They are fundamental expectations for resilience and security in modern deployments. And finally, clean enterprise repo defaults. Leaving an enterprise repo warning active when there's no license creates completely avoidable friction. It basically teaches new users that their very first post-install experience is cleaning up a sloppy-feeling repo warning. Finally, Section 6, Community Venting versus Patching. Let's talk about how change actually happens here.
There's a really stark contrast in how the community handles all this friction. On one hand, you have public venting. Does it fix the bug directly? Rarely. But man, is it emotionally satisfying. It validates the pain, gathers examples, and highlights broader patterns of user frustration. But on the flip side, we have the harsh open source reality, bug reports and patches. This is the stuff that actually moves the needle. But it requires deep context and intense testing. Telling a user to just patch it yourself is honestly a bit of a dodge. A home lab learner or a frustrated admin hitting a weird DNS override bug doesn't necessarily have the time or the context to safely alter Proxmox internals without totally breaking their existing systems.
And this brings us right back to the core realization. Proxmox tries to be both. The maintainers are caught in a tremendously difficult, almost impossible position. The VMware converts, they just want a managed appliance where they literally never touch the OS. The Linux veterans, they want a raw, predictable Debian operating system. Proxmox is actively trying to appease both groups at the exact same time, and as a result, it occasionally just alienates everyone when those two personalities inevitably clash. If we summarize what the community actually wants, it's pretty grounded. They want expected network paths honored. They want predictable DNS. They desperately need better CLI help that doesn't require constantly flipping over to a browser tab. And they want encryption and bonding to feel like normal install paths, not bizarre side quests. Notice what they aren't asking for here. Nobody's demanding flashy AI dashboards or a generic Debian web UI. They just want unglamorous maturity in the areas they touch every single day. So, I'm going to leave you with this final provocative question. Should Proxmox adapt to the Linux underneath, or should admins just accept that they need to adapt to Proxmox? The absolute best version of this platform is probably the one that makes the underlying Linux feel more powerful and less surprising, without acting like a stubborn second operating system. Until that balance is struck, this friction between the appliance and the OS is going to keep generating sparks. Thank you for joining me on this explainer, and I really encourage you to think about how your own tools balance standard convention with strict control.